Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers. And anyone else who's popped in because you're curious about what this is or you have got a bit lost. I'm Chatty, welcome to my channel Chatty the Mad Chatter, where I'm going to be chatting away madly about, not cake, but this is my big cup of tags, and I'm going to be doing a classics tag today. So it is the what makes a classic tag. So that is what we're going to be chatting about. But before I do that, if you are new to my channel, I do not edit my videos. It's one long continuous shot because my technology doesn't work. So cheers everyone, it could be chaos. Clink, 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 clink. So also I have a cold because it is that time of year, so I'm going to be a bit croaky and I'm probably going to be pausing and running off to get tissues all the time because that's just what's happening, but it's okay. I am armed with tea, so hopefully I can manage to stay undry and uncroaky, but we'll see how it goes. It's going to be fun. Okay, I've got my notes so I know what I'm talking about, and this tag was created by, hold on, sorry. Just managed to last over 1 minute before the cold takes over. Let's try again. This tag was created by Mark from Book Time with Elvis. I will link Mark's video in the description box below, where Mark has a really kind of in-depth chat about what it is that makes a classic a classic. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that from my point of view. And I was so very kindly tagged in this by Roz from Scally About the Books. It was a while ago now. It kind of came quite soon after sort of quite a few booktubers kind of in the south of the UK met up, organised by Katie, and Roz kindly tagged all of the people in that as a tag, but I finally got around to doing it because I knew this was going to be one where I need to kind of apply a lot more thought to. I did have to research some of the words in the question. It's a little bit more highbrow than the tags I usually do, but it was definitely fun to kind of like get thinking about different things. So it was very thought-provoking. So I very much relished the chance of doing this tag. So thank you so much, Roz, for that. I am going to put my own sort of like spin on it slightly. So the tag is what makes a classic, and through exploring that, Mark then went through this article where it kind of spoke about the different things that make a classic, and then used those questions into a book tag because he thought they kind of lent themselves really well for it. And it has been a lot of fun to kind of assign books to those different things. I am not very well read in the world of classics. I have read a lot of the basics and haven't really kind of branched out that much from there. But what I do read a lot of is middle grade. So I am going to kind of like change it slightly into what makes a classic, what makes a children's classic. And I've linked all of these questions to specifically children's book, a mixture of middle grade and a little bit of YA. They kind of still come under that children's umbrella, but generally it is more kind of middle grade is the baseline for this. So that I thought that would be kind of fun, kind of like for me to fit it into what I enjoy a lot of and what I feel I can talk a little bit more about. So yeah, I'm just gonna have a bit of tea and then we're gonna crack on with the tag. Okay, so in my opinion, what makes a classic is the kind of 2 points of this are a book that has continued to be popular outside of the time in which it was written. So I think it does need to have been written maybe over 20 years ago. Some people will even say longer, but there is a book that it was over 20 years ago. I think some people will say like, you know, if over 50 years ago, it has to have like to have stand the test of time. I don't think you can kind of put a time limit on things, because my kind of second part of it is like the appeal of it, and it's sort of like, what is it that makes this book appealing? So I suppose this is more specifically kind of towards like children's classics. What makes its appeal not only to the generation in which it was written and sort of like on, but still kind of continuously today, why are children still happy to read these books? There must be something that still appeals to us as readers. So it kind of has that timeless appeal, where it still feels relevant. There is still something about it that provides a huge amount of enjoyment to us. It is thought-provoking. So there's still something about this book that draws us to it. And in this case, it's not just children, it's also parents and children. So for parents, there can definitely be this kind of nostalgia towards this. And I do think children kind of enjoy this whole concept of something being written a really long time ago. Like this idea of history, of something being really old, it's exciting for them. So hearing stories that were written, 100 years ago just sounds really thrilling. And talking about what that time would have been like, to kind of get the context of that book as well, I think is particularly really, really valid for children to be able to explore that. And I think it opens up a whole range of different discussions, and a completely different topic for a video, but I think it's one of those things of why, as much as we want children to be reading and accessing stories, and it's a lovely thing for you to go off and do by yourself, I still think there needs to be an awareness of the caregiver, to be able to be there for questions and to be able to kind of talk to them through. If there's a book that has got sort of like a difficult subject matter in it, to be able to be there to kind of support them with it and talk through what they found, what they understood, how they feel about that, how we relate it to today, if there are some more difficult topics, because there are some books that I'm going to be exploring that have got much more difficult topics. And it's not that I don't think children should be able to deal with them. I absolutely do think it's important for them to have them, but I definitely think there needs to be an exploration around them with the adult, to kind of help them make sense of it, and so that they're not carrying any worry that they might have by themselves, that they can let it out and explore it with an adult. Okay, so I like to do the gimmick of just taking the tags out the T. It is all in the order, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it in its normal order. So tag number 1 is the one with the gripping plot and universal themes. And for me, this one, it could have been many. It could have been many. But the one I've chosen to talk about is The Wolves of Willoughby Chase by Joan Aiken. I do not have a physical copy with me. My Joan Aiken series that has kind of been put together by myself and my mum Nata lives at Nata's house, mainly because she has more space. So that one is there. So what makes The Wolves of Willoughby Chase a classic with such a gripping plot? This was published in 1962, and it is the start of kind of turns into about sort of like 10 book series. Some kind of link in together more than others, but it's this alternative history of England, where instead of the Georgian princes in the 1700s taking over, we have the Jacobite one. So we have James III, but it kind of tends to focus more on the kind of the Victorian Revolution, Industrial Revolution. So you have it that what would have been Georgian into Victorian, and that kind of era is explored, and with a little bit of kind of surrealism in there as well. The first book that starts this off, the first book that starts this off, is one that doesn't go too deep into that, but it does have those universal themes of an orphanage. We all like to read a story about children kind of like having to go through difficulties and overcoming them in this struggle. We have a lovely friendship between Bonnie and her cousin Sylvie. We have parents going away. We have a sort of like adults that are supposed to have the children's best interests at heart, not really having their best interests at heart, and having to navigate that. And I think there is just something universally appealing about reading as a child when the world kind of isn't always fair to children. Like adults always have much more of a say in things. And in some cases this is correct. In some cases this is very difficult when you are a child. So it's like these children trying to navigate being able to try and, whilst they are being ruled by this adult authority, trying to kind of wend around that. And it was just such an easy read. I haven't read it for such a long time. I'm really looking forward to a reread to see if it kind of lives up to what I remember of it. But I remember being absolutely gripped by this, absolutely sympathising and investing in the characters of Bonnie and Sylvie, and really just wanting the best for them and wanting to see them succeed in this. It's also followed by Black Hearts in Battersea, which I think I loved even more. It tended to sort of have more of a kind of political plot, and you meet the character Dido Twite, who is a character that kind of is throughout most of the series the main protagonist, and she is just this kind of lovable Dickensian character. She's brilliant. Okay, that was that one. So let's move on to the next tag, which is tag number 2, the subversive one. That's the word I had to look up, subversive. So from what I understand, it is undermining or overthrowing the established or existing system. That is quite a fun ask for a book. Again, there were some that I could have chosen, but I felt they fitted more into different ones. But I think this book that I did end up choosing really does fit this category, but might not be something you'd necessarily think of. So for the subversive one, I have Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This was published in 1868, and this was the time of suffrage. In the USA, throughout Europe, women were trying to get the vote, trying to establish their rights. And what this story began of was Louisa May Alcott was asked to write a story for girls, and she was like, I don't think I can do that. I don't write those sorts of books. I don't really like girls. The only girls I kind of know are me and my sisters. And then this is what she came out with, which was immediately beloved by people who read it. And I think one of the things that is universally appealing about this, and why it still appeals today, is the heart and the truth of this family, going through hard times, struggling with each other, having, some fights and ups and downs like all families do, and also making up as well. And I think there was a lot of warmth and messages about, trying to follow your path and trying to stick to your talents and trying to do what feels right for you, without it being too preachy or moralistic, which I think was more of the stories written for children at that time. So one of the big things with this one is the character of Jo. Jo, I think, is very much based on Louisa May Alcott. I think there's a reason why, out of all the sisters, Jo tends to appeal to most people. She's the one that tries to fight the convention. She's the one that will blurt out things and kind of say what she thinks more, and we love her for that. And she is definitely an inspiration behind lots of female literature writers, reading about Jo March and the fact that she pursued her literary career, and that she wanted to choose that much more over the conventional getting married. Whilst at the same time, I think there is an appreciation of women having different choices. And if that's what you choose to do, that's fine. That's your choice. I think it's just saying we can choose more than just that. We can choose different things. And there was definitely a feeling. So in the UK, Little Women was published in 2 books as Little Women and Good Wives. So I think in America, Little Women is Little Women and Good Wives as 1 volume. So this book, Little Women, that I have, actually stops just before they start turning into young women. So I think this will be the end of the first volume in the American copies. And then I do also have, is it up there? No, that's Manfield Park. It's here. So I do also have Good Wives as well. I don't think that title would have been necessarily approved by Louisa May Alcott. The concept of Little Women is kind of almost like that. They're not quite women yet, but they are having to take on more responsibilities, more adult roles, and kind of navigating the world and their place in it. And I think one of the things that makes it subversive is, as you start reading it, there is sort of a tendency to kind of enjoy the friendship between Jo and, as she calls him, Teddy, but I think he's known to everyone else as Laurie, and wanting them to kind of get married. But Louisa May Alcott was like, this wasn't right for her character. That wasn't how she was going to be. So the subversiveness was that she goes off, she gets to kind of live her own life, and she ends up marrying someone that wouldn't have necessarily had that romantic hero appeal to girls. You know, he wasn't the only son of this rich family. He wasn't young, he wasn't handsome, he was an old German professor, but they both really enjoyed similar things, and they thought strongly about different things. They both had kind of like similar life goals. So seeing more of that compatibility in their relationship kind of changed things. And I think Louisa May Alcott may have not wanted to have married off Joe at all. And that is kind of echoed in some of the other characters that come in. So this is also followed then by Little Men, which I love, and Joe's Boys, which I struggled with, but I read it as a teenager, so I don't know how I'd think about it as an adult. But I think that's mainly because some of the stories were sad. But there is a character in there who doesn't want to settle down and get married, and she does not. We see her as an adult, and she is continuing to live an independent, unmarried life, focusing on her career. So Louisa May Alcott definitely does a great job at subverting the story of women, that you can go out and you can chase your dreams. I think that's everything I wanted to say on that one. Just checking my notes. Yes, that was it. Yeah, so I've read all 4. Definitely do a reread of all of those. Looking forward to doing that at some point in the future. And I also love the copy I have. I love these is it Puffin? Yeah, these Puffin children's classics. And you have the nice little pictures in the end pages, and it is just it's just such a cute little book. I love how small it is. And the next book I want to talk about is also from that Puffin Classics collection. So let me pull out the next tag and we'll see what it is. It is tag number 3, which is the one with the one which defines a time and a place. And I have chosen a historical fiction, which is Goodnight, Mr. Tom by Michelle Magoria. I think this is the most recent of the classics that I talk about. So this was published in 1981, which is definitely over 20 years. Over 30, it's 32 years. This book is 32 years old. So some might feel this is not old enough to be a classic, but it's in the Puffin Classics collection. So I think we can count it. And I'm so pleased it's in the Puffin Classics collection. I have another copy of this, but this is my special copy that I read from for the first time this year. It was part of the FOMO Book Club's read for March. And I really wanted an excuse to reread this, so it was lovely having that. We have got a lovely kind of red end pages of the clouds here. We've got the clouds and the plane, and we have the silhouette of Willie, Mr. Tom, and I can't remember the dog's name. I'm so sorry. Sorry, dog. We love dog. But yes, I can't remember his name. I do apologise. It definitely is a classic. There is just, again, so much heart in this book. And in terms of the time and place, it definitely evokes the 1940s where it is set. So this is set it's set in a country village. Some of it takes place in London during the Blitz, but it mainly takes place in the country. Willie is an evacuee who goes to live with Mr. Tom, who takes him in. And it's how these two sort of lost souls learn to bring out the best in each other, learn to find love, learn what it means to be a family, what it means to kind of look after each other in this world. And it is just, their relationship is just beautiful. It's what absolutely brings the book alive. But what really gives it its time and place is the village life. And I think it is an absolute gorgeous showing of a village where everyone knows everyone, everyone's known everyone for ages, but there's also this wonderful community aspect. And I know this kind of definitely comes up a lot when you talk about, when you talk to people who lived through the wartime, and you look at old people's, you look at sort of like old records of people talking about it. And it was this sense of community and camaraderie where everyone kind of had to pull together. there was rations. People were losing fans and family for different things. Life was changing, things were changing, and everyone did kind of have to pull together to kind of support each other through this. And this kind of really comes across in this book, and just the joy. And we get a mixture of some evacuees being treated badly, some evacuees not settling, but you also get some lovely ones of them being looked after and having really good relationships with them as well. So I think Michelle did an excellent job of pulling all those different storylines together. And within this book, it also looks at other themes as well of what other people's like struggles were. And it's just gorgeous. It really is wonderful. Like the writing, how it just really pulls you in is fantastic. And I don't know anyone who read this that did not love it. So it's so appealing. I think it's such a wonderful book to read, and I think absolutely deserving of a classic. Okay, tag number 4 is The Complex Groundbreaking One. So again, this is a book where I don't have a physical copy. That makes me really sad. I definitely want a physical copy, but it's one that I have recently reread and absolutely loved, and that is Mildred D. Taylor's Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Now, this was written in the, I think, 1977. This book was written. And again, it's another historical fiction. It is set in the 1930s in America in the Great Depression. And it follows the family, it follows the Logan family. This is a family who are Black. They have some land, which they farm and they look after themselves. And it is sort of after, it's sort of like during the time where people still very much held on to kind of the philosophy of whites being better than blacks, and just all of the old like difficulties with slave trade and cotton farm, slave ownership. So all of that is definitely bubbling under the surface. There's a lot of racism that is explored in here, but it is just done so well. So within Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, we have Cassie, who is our protagonist. She is the second oldest child in the Logan family. I think she's the second oldest. So it goes into kind of like what this family do to try and keep the farm, to be able to keep paying off the mortgage, to keep paying off the rent on it, to keep providing enough for the family, like all of them pulling together. And it also looks through at their family values, their community values, their fight for justice, their fight for equality, whilst also navigating this very harmful, scary world, wanting to bring up their children to appreciate themselves, to have this self-worth, but whilst trying to protect them from the anger of white people who have a chip on their shoulder about the fact that this Black family owns land and they don't like it. So there's so many things in this book, so many things, and it is incredibly complex, and it is so groundbreaking, because I think this is one of the first books where you were hearing Black stories. There is a foreword in the one that I was listening to by Jacqueline Woodson, just about how inspiring Mildred D. Taylor's work was to her own writing, to her own story, to be able to see herself, to be able to hear of someone fighting a bully and overcoming it. And also there was an afterword by Mildred D. Taylor, and the stories and the inspiration come from her family and their experiences and their community and what they went through. It is so, so powerful. I think it's one of the most important and impressive children's classics out there, just because of everything it deals with. One thing I particularly love about it is that you see things through the eyes of this child that is being raised as she should in a family where it shouldn't matter who you are or where you come from, but just what you bring. Your talents, your hard work, your values should speak for you. But unfortunately, in the world, that is not the case. People put people in boxes. People think people should stay in certain places. And this child is wonderful and is just like, no, why are you treating me like this? This is wrong. But at the same time, the adults around her are trying to navigate, when do we push for equality and our rights? When do we hold back to protect ourselves so we don't get beaten up and killed? And that's such a difficult thing to navigate. And it's amazing to see it. And also within that, there's other complexities that you can look at, just like the people's values of not listening about what other people think. So if you have something and you like it, don't let anyone else make you feel bad about it, because, you know, they could be speaking from jealousy, but it doesn't matter what other people think. It matters what you think. And also thinking about what makes a good friend. Who do you want to have your back? Who do you trust? Who do you stand up for? What do you want from life? And there's a really fascinating character in this book called TJ, that you can see he wants to be thought of as like the life and soul. And I think he struggles a lot against not being as clever as he would like to be. And he goes the wrong way about trying to fill that void with having things, wanting items, and misinterpreting different friendships, and choosing the wrong friends, and looking down on people to